Hello and welcome back. In this video, we will learn next set of functions under reference category and we will explore total of 8 functions. We will start with row and column functions, then rows, columns, TOROW, TOCOL, CHOOSEROWS and finally CHOOSECOLS function. These functions are very simple to learn, so let's get started. First function is row and has only one optional argument. Let's try to break it down. The function name row points at Excel rows and the input to reference can be single or range of cells. Since this is an optional argument, if no input is given, it takes the reference of the row where formula is entered. So this function returns the row number in Excel sheet based upon the input provided. Next function is column and it is same as row function, just that it returns the column number in Excel based upon the input provided. Next function is rows and it has only one mandatory argument, and as the name itself says, this function is the plural form of previous row function, and obviously it is used to identify how many rows are available in a given input array. Next function is columns. Again it is same as rows function, just that it is used to identify how many columns are available in a given input array. Next important function is TOROW and it has one mandatory and two optional argument. The function name TOROW means to convert a given range of data into one single row, and obviously it takes an array as input. The next optional argument, ignore, determines whether to ignore blanks and errors. It takes 4 different values: 0 to keep all the values, 1 to ignore blanks, 2 to ignore errors, and 3 to ignore both blanks and errors. If input array has any blanks and errors, we can use this argument to skip them. Next is scan by column argument and it defines how to scan the array. If the input is false, then it scans horizontally by row. If the input is true, then it scans vertically by column. In either cases, the final output will be one single row, but the way the data is sequenced will change based upon how the input array is scanned. Next function is TOCOL, which means to column, and it is same as TOROW, just that it converts the input array into one single column. All arguments and their input values will remain same. Next important function is CHOOSEROWS and it has two mandatory arguments. The function name CHOOSEROWS literally means to choose or select required rows. Obviously, the input to array argument will be the data with multiple rows and columns. The next series of arguments, row num1, row num2, 3, 4 and so on, will take the numerical index numbers of each rows like 1, 2, 3 as input and will return those rows as output. The sequence in which we give the row indexes as input, the output will also be in the same sequence. Next function is CHOOSECOLS, which means choose columns, and it is same as CHOOSEROWS, just that it takes column indexes as input and gives only those columns as output in the same sequence. Finally, we are done with all the basics. Let's jump back to Excel and see some simple examples. So we are back into Excel and this is the small data we will use to cover all our examples. First, let's start with the row function. Let's not give any input to this argument. Close the parenthesis and hit enter to get the row number where the formula is entered. Now if we select any one single cell as input, we get the row number of our selection. And if we select multiple cells as input, we get the row numbers of all the selected cells. Same is the case with column function. No input will give the output of the column where the function is entered. Single cell will give the output of the selected cell column number. Multiple cells will give the output of all the selected cells column numbers. Next function is rows. Select a range of cells as input and it will tell how many rows are selected. Similarly for columns, select a range of cells as input and it will tell how many columns are selected. Pretty simple functions. Next is TOROW function. Let's select all the table data as input. Since we do not have any blanks or errors, we will skip this argument. Now for scan type, let's choose false, which is the default value, and we will get the output of each rows into one single row. If we change the scan type as true, we will get the output of each columns into one single row. Similarly for TOCOL function, let's change the function name here itself and then change the scan type to false, and we get the output of each rows into one single column. If we change scan type as true, we get the output of each columns into one single column. Finally, we are left with last two functions. Let's pick CHOOSEROWS function. Select all the table data as input. Now say I want this table in a reverse order. Let's input the row indexes as 3, 2 and 1. Close the parenthesis and hit enter to get the table in reverse order. If we give only 2 row indexes as input, we get only 2 rows of the data as output. Same is the case with CHOOSECOLS function. Let's change the function name here itself and change the index numbers as 1, 2, and we get the output of first 2 columns. If we change the index numbers as 2, 1, we get the same output in reverse order. Finally, we are done. All these functions are simple enough and individually they don't find major applications. But if we combine these functions with other functions like VLOOKUP and XLOOKUP or any other functions which takes arrays as input, it will give such functions even more flexibility. And that is what I wanted to cover in this video.